Hey everyone, so I just wanted to cover those questions that you asked. So thanks for asking that on the strength training support group. Scout might be joining us or just yawning. I'm not sure what he's going to do. You just walked twice. Come up here if you want to help. Okay, he wants to help out with some of that question. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and read off those questions, and I'm going to give you some of those answers. So appreciate you guys all dropping in there. So Melody said how to get rid of apron belly in people 50 and older. Actually, 50 and older has been kind of a common theme here, and actually a lot of the people that we do work with probably hit that bucket. So so I had to look this up a little bit just to confirm kind of what I was thinking. But when we said apron belly, I had to look that up. But I thought I had an understanding of what that was. So from Healthline. And if you want this link, I can definitely give it to you. So that it's known as a pannus. So that's the actual term of it, and it's going to be like that excess skin and fat hanging over the stomach area. So I think that the answer here is going to be it's going to depend. Okay. So if weight loss, if a lot of weight loss has already happened, that may be and it's more skin, that may have to be a surgical thing. And it's probably the extent to which how large it possibly is. If weight loss hasn't happened yet, it's definitely possible that weight loss could help, and weight loss is recommended. And so with the weight loss too, that's going to go with just making sure you're in a caloric deficit. Now, there's no exercise that's going to spot reduce where you will lose fat. So you can't just do a specific exercise and it's not going to send a trigger to your body saying lose fat here. Okay. Exercise does help a little bit with fat loss. It's not going to help in one specific area. What you can do is you can hit specific target areas for muscle gain. So maybe some extra core stuff that you might want to do. On my page, there's a quick targeted core routine that might be good for you. But again, it's going to come down to weight loss or surgical things. Again, I am not the expert on surgical things, but weight loss is caused by a persistent caloric deficit. So good question. Janester, you said best way to combine. Sorry, I'm just looking down and reading all of these here, but you said best way to combine the videos in a week. What's the ideal routine? Muscle mass and weight. How much time it takes to revert back the muscle lost? How fast can you go up in weights? And in what increments? Yeah, this is also a really good question, and it's a multiple part question here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with how much time it takes to revert back the muscle that's lost. Okay, so this depends on training status. So if you're super and also how much muscle you lost. So if you're super new to resistance training, it may take you like 8 weeks, but for that, like you can put on muscle. There's always diminished returns. Okay, so if you already had a lot of muscle, it's harder to put on muscle. If you didn't really ever do strength training, you're probably going to make some improvements quickly. I probably made the most improvements in the amount of muscle that I had within like the first year and a half of doing strength training, and then some marginal changes after that. I work with a guy who over 3 months of doing strength training, he wasn't like necessarily trying to lose weight, gained about 2 pounds of muscle, and he's like probably like 6 months into strength training. So it's not like you're not going to gain a ton of muscle quickly. Okay. Probably like if I'm just giving a rough estimate here, in a year, maybe like 6 to 10 pounds wouldn't be unreasonable. But the key here is that you're inducing and applying progressive overload. So what does that mean? That means increasing the weight over time, which I think goes to another part of your question. What the best way to combine videos in a week? The ideal routine for muscle mass. Okay, so what I would say is so if we're looking at the frequency, I would do it at least 3 times per week. And with our videos, just because they're short, you might want to start combining them to get at least. So you might do like routine 1 and routine 2 together to get at least like a 30-minute session all together. There's not necessarily going to be an ideal routine. The important concept. So if you want a muscle to grow, this is what you need to do. Okay, you need to recruit muscle fibers and you need to fatigue those muscle fibers, okay? So let's say that I could overhead press 20 pounds and I could do it for 10 repetitions, but let's just say I used 5 pounds and I did it for 10 repetitions. That's not going to be a sufficient stimulus to recruit all of my muscle fibers and also to fatigue them. If I use that 5 and I did it like 50 times, then I could be recruiting some of those muscle fibers. So like what we need to do here is we need to, maybe a good example is this. If I maxed out on a bench press, meaning I did the most that I could do for 1 repetition, I'm recruiting all possible muscle fibers. So I'm recruiting them. Let's just say that was 100 pounds and I could do it for 1 rep. Now, if I did 90 pounds and I did it for 1 rep, I'm not recruiting all my muscle fibers, but what if I did it for 3 reps? Each subsequent rep, I'm recruiting more muscle fibers to get the job done because it's inducing fatigue. This is like, how fast can you go up in weights and at what increments? That's really, really individual. When you're new, you might be able to go up fast in weights. You might be able to go up really fast in weights. When I started doing things like deadlifting, I probably went up 5-10 pounds in my lifts every single week for like a year. But that's not happening anymore. So eventually you hit a plateau. Okay? So eventually you end up hitting a plateau. Once you hit that plateau, it becomes more complex. So that's when you start, and I'm happy to make a video on this too, but that's when you might have to start utilizing different rep ranges. So maybe 1 week you're doing 8 reps, then next week you're doing a 10 rep range, and the week after that you're doing a 12 rep range. Then you repeat that again, 8, 10, 12, but then with trying to do heavier weight. If I use 10 pounds when I was in the 8 rep range, I would use like 8 when I'm in the 10 and maybe like 6 or something like that when I'm in the 12. More reps, the weight has to be lighter. If I repeat that back, then I would want to try to go heavier the next time around. There's a little bit in that, but if you want to gain muscle, you need to recruit your muscle fibers and you need to fatigue them. You do that by lifting heavier or by lifting moderate weight with higher repetitions. Skylar said the Apple Health app gives a rating of cardio fitness by estimating the VO2 max. What are some low impact ways of trying to increase that rating? Having a goal like that keeps me focused. Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll superimpose up an example of mine. So if you look at that, what you'll see is it goes up, or it went up when I was training for a race, and then subsequently when the race was over, you can see that it starts to go down. Okay. So VO2 max is just how effective your body is at utilizing oxygen. Okay, and so the higher that number is, the Scout just tooted over there. I heard that. You got some splaining to do, buddy. The higher that number is, the more aerobically fit you are. That number responds really well to high intensity training. Okay, I know that we put down low impact. Low impact is different than intensity, at least in my mind, and I'll explain that in a second. So, just like how if I could lift 10 pounds, let's just say I could lift 10 pounds and I could do a curl with that, and I could do that 10 times. If I kept doing that, that would no longer be a sufficient stimuli to make me stronger. If I can run a 10-minute mile and I kept doing that, that would no longer be a sufficient stimuli to increase my VO2 max. VO2 max is like the aerobic comparison to muscular strength, okay? So you have to work, so it responds best to training at higher intensities. A good way to think about that is training at a high heart rate. There's a lot of low impact exercise modalities. Running is probably not going to be a good one for that because that's a high impact. That's a lot of stress on your joints. You could consider cycling. You could consider swimming. You could consider the elliptical. Those are all low impact exercises on the joints. Okay, but when you're doing that, if you want your VO2 max to go up, your heart rate needs to be high. It needs to be close to your maximum. You can calculate your maximum by subtracting your age from 220. It's going to respond well to like interval training. That might be where you do something where your heart rate's up really, really high for like 20 seconds, and then you give yourself 40 seconds to cool off. Maybe that's like a sprint on the bike, 40 seconds light, followed by another sprint. We do, at the gym, we do a Tabata protocol, and that's 20 seconds on, really fast on the bike, as fast as you can, and then 10 seconds off, and you can go up to 8 rounds of that. So it's done in 4 minutes. It's not fun. And then Skylar, you also said, if we have more time during the 1 to 2 sessions per week, what are some ways you would suggest adding on the 18-minute strength training videos to improve our health and fitness results? For instance, I have added the walk 1K steps and the 100 squat video after a routine, or the dead bug and core videos. What would be other good options? Okay, yeah. So if you want to add on top of that, you can definitely add 2 videos together too, and that would take you to about like 40 minutes. But you're also doing it totally how I would even envision it, is do the main thing and then select a quick targeted routine if you'd want to. That's going to take you to about the 30-minute option. But if your question is, what's an optimal exercise and physical activity routine for health? It's when you're doing something like aerobics 2 to 3 times per week, or hitting, I'd say, this is a good and interesting question too. I would say at least 150 minutes of aerobics per week. That can include your walking as well, like intentional walking, and then doing like 2 to 3 bouts of strength training, totaling maybe like 60 to 90 minutes, and then getting something like 10,000 steps. I think that's really valuable to do, and then also focusing on some of those qualities that you actually asked a question about before. Am I able to go faster? Am I able to work at higher heart rates? Am I lifting heavier weights? That's also really important. Strength and aerobic capacity are really important metrics for health. And I'm looking at this just to see if I've missed anything. So yes, you can definitely do 2 videos together. You can do 1 video, and also think about adding any of those quick targeted routines too. Judy Mice says, hi, is it recommended to do the same workout for 1 month as it is in the app, or change every week like you have on YouTube? And thank you. Love your workouts. Thank you. So we know why we go to the workout videos. Okay. So yeah, ideally one day the app is everything's just gonna be in the app. That's gonna be the best situation overall. But what you can do is every month I put out 4 new videos, and so just cycle through them. The first time you train, do routine 1. Next time you train, do 2. Next time you train, do 3. Next time you train, do 4. If you're doing it at least 2 times per week, that means you will go through 2 times. And if you go through 2 times, the next time around, try to increase the amount of weight that you're lifting. Okay. That is definitely what I recommend. If you're feeling a little bit more advanced, you can do 2 routines together, and that will kind of expedite that process. But either way, go through the whole thing. You can follow the YouTube ones. That's the exact same as in the clinic. It's just the Weight Watchers app does not have all of the ones that I have. That's stuff that's specific to the clinic. Okay. And last one was Monty said, what is the best workout for weight loss for women over 50? There's some things that are kind of forced upon you to becoming important, and like strength training kind of becomes forced upon us as we become older. It's just because we start to lose strength, lose bone mineral density as we get older. So this is kind of a tough question to answer. It has nothing to do with why like a difference between like even like a 30-year-old and a 50-year-old. The advice is all going to be the same. Okay, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. Okay. Exercise helps a little bit with weight loss, and I'm gonna break this down the best that I can. Exercise helps more with the quality of weight loss and weight loss maintenance. Okay, so let me talk about resistance training, and then let me talk about aerobic training. Resistance training is going to have very small effects on if you just look at the scale. Okay, if you take someone that does resistance training plus caloric deficit, sure, they might lose a kilogram more than somebody that just does caloric deficit. But if you looked at the quality of weight loss, the person that does resistance training, specifically the person that does resistance training and uses progressive overload, meaning they're increasing the amount of weight that they're lifting over time, they're going to retain muscle mass as they're losing weight. which is going to help with weight loss maintenance for a number of reasons. So when people lose muscle, they're at a greater likelihood for gaining weight back. So muscle is a metabolically active tissue. It burns more calories than fat. Like actually your organs actually burn the most amount of calories. Your brain actually burns the most amount of calories. And that's one reason why if I lose muscle, my metabolic rate goes down. But also what perhaps could be happening is that when you lose muscle, your body sends hunger signals, which cause you to eat more until you've regained the muscle you've lost, which often results in this thing called fat overshooting, where you gain the weight back. You end up gaining back more weight than you had actually lost because of that muscle you lost. So losing muscle is not good. We want to prevent that because that's going to help with weight loss maintenance. Now, aerobic activity will help more with weight loss, just a number on the scale, than strength training. Why? Because you burn more calories when you do aerobic activity. So if you want to think about a number that's actually going to help with aerobic activity, that's going to help with weight loss, that is aerobic activity, you're going to need to get like 300 minutes per week. But when you exercise more, you also tend to get more hungry. So it's really like when I say caloric deficit, yes, conceptually it's simple, but if you exercise more, your body says eat more. Like it's trying to maintain a state of homeostasis. So that being said, 300 minutes of aerobic activity seems to be associated with weight loss, but also more importantly, weight loss maintenance. I know that seems like a lot, but if you think about it like this, let's just say you did an intentional 30-minute brisk walk every single day. That's already 210 minutes of aerobic activity. And then let's just say you did planned something more vigorous, like hopping on an elliptical or a bike, and you did 2 sessions of 30 minutes. You're basically there. The vigorous tends to count for a little bit more than the moderate. So it's just making sure that you're consistently active. And a thing that most people don't talk about is making sure you have as little sedentary behavior as possible. Step count's a nice proxy for that. If you have a step count of 5,000 or lower, it's generally considered sedentary. 6,000 and higher is when you start to reduce the risk of all-cause mortality. But hitting a higher number is going to overall be a good idea for health. It should support weight loss a little bit. Just at the very least, being sedentary is not beneficial for weight loss, okay? Well, I appreciate everyone asking those questions, and feel free to drop any more questions that you have into that strength training support group.